The evening sky blushed with streaks of gold and crimson as the city lights began to flicker awake. People rushed past each other on the busy sidewalks, their eyes glued to phones, their minds tangled in deadlines and deals. Amid the noise and motion, a frail woman knelt beside an overflowing trash bin behind a luxury restaurant. Her hair, tangled and dulled by exhaustion, framed a face too young for such hardship. In her trembling arms, a baby whimpered softly, the kind of cry that pierces even the most calloused hearts. She searched the bin with desperation. Half-eaten bread, wilted vegetables, anything remotely edible. Her hand shook as she brushed dirt off a discarded sandwich, hesitating before breaking it into tiny pieces for her hungry child. From across the street, a man in an immaculate black suit watched silently. His name was Adrian Holt, a billionaire whose empire stretched across continents. To the world, he was a figure of cold precision, a man who measured life in profits and results. But tonight, something inside him faltered. He had come to this part of town out of habit. Every Thursday, he took a walk incognito, no chauffeur, no bodyguards, no one to remind him of who he was supposed to be. He claimed it helped him stay human. Yet he had never seen humanity stripped bare quite like this. For a moment, he simply stood there, motionless, as the woman whispered to her baby. Her voice was cracked but full of love. "Don't cry, sweetheart. Mommy found food. We'll be okay, I promise." The words were tender lies, spoken more to soothe her own soul than the child hunger. Something in that whisper broke through the armor of wealth that had long shielded Adrian's heart. Without thinking, he crossed the street and stopped a few steps away. The woman froze when she saw his polished shoes and tailored coat. Shame flooded her face as she shielded her baby, expecting scorn. "I am sorry," she stammered. "I'll leave. I didn't mean to." Adrian's voice was calm, almost too calm. "How long has it been since you've eaten?" She blinked, startled. 2 days, maybe 3, she murmured, eyes downcast. "But it's okay. I just need something for my son." He studied her for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena," he repeated softly, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. Then, with an unexpected gentleness, he said, "Come with me." Her instinct was to refuse. People who offered help often wanted something in return. But his tone carried neither pity nor pity's cruel twin, disgust. It was genuine. Still, she hesitated, clutching her baby closer. Adrian gestured toward a black car parked nearby. "You and your son need a proper meal. Nothing more. I won't hurt you." She hesitated for a few seconds more, then nodded slowly. Moments later, she found herself seated in the backseat of a luxury car, soft leather beneath her, warmth wrapping around her like a forgotten memory. She kept her eyes low, feeling out of place, her baby asleep against her chest. Adrian said nothing as they drove to one of his hotels downtown. The staff at the entrance straightened instantly upon seeing him, their polished professionalism masking their curiosity. "Prepare a private dining room," he ordered curtly, "and food suitable for a nursing mother and child. Immediately." When they were seated, Lena could barely hold the utensils. Her hands trembled too much. She ate quietly at first, like someone afraid the food might vanish if she enjoyed it too much. Adrian watched her with a strange stillness, as if each bite she took fed something in him too. After a while, she finally looked up. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread. He leaned back in his chair. "Because I once watched someone I loved starve," he said simply. Her eyes softened. "Your mother." He nodded slowly, pain flickering in his gaze. "She died when I was 12. No one helped her. I swore I'd never be that powerless again." Silence stretched between them, filled with things neither of them knew how to say. When Lena finished eating, Adrian stood. "You're not going back out there tonight," he said. "You and your son will stay here. I'll have a room prepared." Her eyes widened. "Sir, I can't accept that. I don't have money. I don't have anything to give." "I didn't ask for anything in return," he interrupted softly. "Consider it. Repayment for a debt the world owes you." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." But that night, as Adrian sat in his penthouse office, staring out over the city lights, something about her haunted him. There was a quiet strength in her that stirred something unfamiliar. He found himself replaying her voice in his mind, the way she held her baby as though protecting the last piece of goodness left in the world. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of compassion would soon unravel secrets buried deep in both their lives, and change everything Adrian Holt thought he knew about love, loss, and redemption. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of the hotel suite, painting soft gold patterns across the pristine sheets. Lena stirred awake, disoriented for a moment by the warmth and the silence. It felt foreign. Safety. Her baby, Noah, slept peacefully beside her, his small fingers curled around hers. She smiled faintly, a rare expression that had almost vanished from her face in the past months. For a brief, fragile moment, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. But then reality crept back in like a shadow. She was in a place she didn't belong, surrounded by luxury she hadn't earned. A billionaire had brought her here, out of kindness or guilt, she couldn't tell. She rose quietly, careful not to wake the child, and stepped to the window. From the 15th floor, the city looked distant, unreal. A soft knock on the door startled her. She hesitated, then opened it a few inches. A woman in a crisp uniform stood outside with a tray. "Good morning, Ms. Lena," she said with a polite smile. "Mr. Holt asked that we serve you breakfast here. He'll be arriving shortly." Lena blinked. "He's coming here?" "Yes, in about 20 minutes. She nodded awkwardly, murmured a thank you, and closed the door. Her heart began to race. She glanced down at her clothes, still the same torn jeans and faded sweater she'd worn yesterday. The thought of him seeing her like this again made her stomach twist with shame. She tried to tidy herself in the mirror, smoothing her hair, wiping her tired eyes. But no reflection could erase the truth. She was a woman who had dug through trash to feed her child. The sound of footsteps outside the suite made her freeze. Then, a soft knock. She opened the door to find Adrian standing there, dressed in another immaculate suit, calm and composed. His presence seemed to fill the room without effort. "Good morning," he said gently. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you. I didn't expect you to come." "I had a meeting nearby," he lied. In truth, he had rearranged his entire morning. Something about her face, the mix of dignity and defeat, had stayed with him all night. His eyes fell on the sleeping baby. For a moment, his expression softened. "He looks peaceful." "He is, now," Lena murmured. "He usually wakes up crying, hungry." Adrian stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You don't have to worry about that anymore." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I've arranged for you and your son to stay here for as long as you need," he said matter-of-factly. "The hotel will provide food, clothes, medical care, whatever's necessary. You'll also receive a small allowance." Her breath caught. "No, I can't accept that. You've done enough already." He met her eyes, his tone steady. "This isn't charity, Lena. It's an opportunity. I don't know your story yet, but something tells me you haven't always lived like this." She looked away, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "No, I haven't." "Then tell me," he said quietly. Her silence stretched long enough that he almost retracted the question. But then, in a voice that trembled like a thread about to snap, she began. "I used to work in a small publishing company. I had a husband, Daniel. He was kind, until he wasn't. When he lost his job, everything changed. He started drinking, gambling. Then one night, he disappeared. Left me with debts I didn't even know existed. I lost the apartment, the job. When I found out I was pregnant, it was already too late. No one would hire me. I've been on the streets ever since." Her words hung in the air, fragile and raw. Adrian listened without interrupting, every detail carving deeper into him. "I tried to get help," she continued, eyes glistening. "But every shelter was full, every program had waiting lists. And people look at you differently when you're holding a baby and begging for food. Like you're contagious." Adrian's jaw tightened. "They shouldn't have." She gave a faint, bitter smile. "The world doesn't owe me anything, Mr. Holt. I just learned to stop expecting kindness." He studied her face for a moment, then said, "Maybe it's time that changes." Something in his tone made her heart skip. But before she could respond, Noah stirred and began to cry. Lena rushed to pick him up, rocking him gently. Adrian watched her, the tenderness in her movements stirring something in him he hadn't felt in years, something that made him uneasy. He cleared his throat. I have to return to the office soon. But I'd like to see you again later today. There's something I want to discuss. She hesitated. What is it? He gave a small, enigmatic smile. A proposal. Not what you think. You'll see. After he left, Lena sat by the window again, her thoughts astorm. Why would a billionaire take such interest in her? Was this pity? Curiosity? Or something else entirely? Hours later, when the sun began to dip again, a car arrived to take her to his office. The building towered over the skyline, steel and glass, cold and perfect. Inside, people in suits hurried through gleaming halls, casting curious glances at her worn clothes and the baby in her arms. A secretary guided her to the top floor, where Adrian waited by the window, city lights flickering behind him. Lena, he greeted, turning with that same calm composure. Please, sit. She did, holding Noah protectively. You said you had something to discuss. He nodded. I've been thinking. You have resilience, intelligence, and strength, qualities most people with comfortable lives never develop. I want to offer you a position at my foundation. We run outreach programs for struggling women and families. You could help us understand what they truly need. Her eyes widened. Me? Work for you? Yes, he said simply. I'll provide training and childcare. You'll have a salary, stability, and a chance to rebuild your life. All I ask is that you use your experience to make our programs more effective. Lena's lips parted, but no words came. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Adrian said quietly. Her voice cracked. Why me? He looked at her for a long moment. Because yesterday, you reminded me of the part of myself I thought I'd lost. The air between them thickened, unspoken, electric. She held his gaze, her heart trembling with confusion and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Finally, she nodded. Yes, I'll do it. A rare, genuine smile crossed his face. Good. Over the next few weeks, Lena's life began to shift in ways she hadn't imagined possible. She moved into a small apartment near the foundation, began training with the staff, and for the first time in years, felt useful again. She helped design new programs for single mothers, her empathy shaping policies more effectively than any consultant could. Adrian visited often, at first to check on her progress, then, for reasons neither of them dared to name. Their conversations grew longer, their silences more comfortable. Sometimes, he'd bring toys for Noah, other times, coffee for her. But what lingered most was the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet admiration. Yet beneath it all, a tension simmered. Adrian was a man bound by power and image, and she was a woman rebuilding from ashes. The world wouldn't understand. And deep down, she feared it all could vanish as suddenly as it had begun. One evening, as rain drummed against her window, a knock came. She opened the door to find Adrian, soaked but composed, his expression unreadable. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low. Lena frowned. What is it? He hesitated, something she'd never seen him do before. Then, slowly, he said, You're not the first woman I've helped like this. But you're the only one I can't stop thinking about. Her heart pounded. Adrian. He stepped closer, the storm outside echoing the one inside them both. I don't know what this is yet, but I know it's real. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Noah began to cry, and the moment shattered, suspended like glass just before it breaks. Adrian exhaled, stepping back, eyes full of emotions he couldn't hide anymore. We'll talk later, he said softly, then turned toward the door, his footsteps fading into the sound of rain as Lena stood there, trembling, her heart caught between fear and something dangerously close to love. Lena stood frozen at the door long after Adrian had gone, her fingers still trembling where they had brushed against his. The echo of his words, "You're the only one I can't stop thinking about," lingered in the silence like a secret too beautiful to believe. Rain streaked down the window, glistening like silver tears, and for the first time in years, her heart felt alive, terrified, and hopeful all at once. The following days unfolded in a blur of confusion and emotion. Adrian didn't come by the office for nearly a week, and though he sent short, polite messages about work matters, Lena could feel the distance between the lines. She told herself it was better this way, that she needed space to think, but every time she saw his name flash on her phone, her heart betrayed her resolve. At night, when Noah slept soundly beside her, she would sit by the window and stare out at the city lights, wondering what a man like Adrian Holt could possibly see in a woman like her. A woman who had known hunger, despair, and the cold bite of loneliness. And yet, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, he saw not her brokenness, but her strength. One evening, as she was leaving the foundation, she noticed the familiar black car parked across the street. The driver stepped out and opened the door, and there he was, Adrian. He looked tired, as though he hadn't slept, but his eyes softened the moment they met hers. "Lena," he said quietly, "can we talk?" She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Inside the car, the silence was thick, heavy with unspoken feelings. Finally, he said, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For confusing you," he said. "For stepping over a line I shouldn't have. I never wanted you to think I helped you because I wanted something in return." Her voice was steady but gentle. "You didn't. You helped because you cared." He turned to her, meeting her gaze fully. "Yes. And that's what terrifies me." She frowned. "Why?" "Because caring for you means risking everything I've built. My name, my company, the image people expect me to keep." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "But not caring feels impossible." Lena's breath caught. "Adrian, I don't want your world to fall apart because of me." He gave a faint, broken smile. "Maybe it needs to fall apart, so I can finally build something real." The car rolled to a stop in front of the hotel where they first met. Adrian stepped out and extended his hand to her. "Walk with me." She took it, and they walked through the quiet streets, the city shimmering with reflected lights. They passed the same alley where she had once dug through trash for food, and she stopped. "This is where you found me," she whispered. "Yes." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "That night, I thought you were just another rich man looking down on me. I never imagined." He reached out, brushing a raindrop, or perhaps a tear, from her cheek. "Neither did I." They stood there for a long moment, two souls bound by a strange, fragile fate, one who had everything but felt empty, and one who had nothing yet held a heart full of quiet strength. From that night on, things began to change. Adrian no longer hid his connection with her. He began involving her in board meetings related to his foundation's work, asking her opinion publicly, valuing her insight in front of others. Some executives whispered behind closed doors, questioning why their billionaire CEO was so close to a former homeless woman, but Adrian no longer cared for their approval. Lena, in turn, transformed before everyone's eyes. She spoke with confidence, compassion, and clarity. Her story became the soul of the foundation, a living symbol of redemption and resilience. When she stood on stage at a charity gala, sharing her journey for the first time, the entire room fell silent. Not a sound, not a breath. And when she finished, there wasn't a single dry eye in the crowd. Adrian watched her from the front row, pride glowing in his eyes like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He realized, at that moment, that Lena had become more than a cause, more than a woman he admired. She was the reason he believed in goodness again. But just as everything seemed to settle into peace, fate tested them one final time. One morning, news broke that a major investor had withdrawn from Adrian's company, citing ethical concerns about his relationship with a woman from the streets. The media seized the story with ruthless hunger, twisting facts, spreading rumors. "The billionaire and the beggar," one headline sneered. Another claimed she was manipulating him for wealth. Lena saw the articles and felt her chest tighten with guilt. She knew this was what he had feared all along. That his reputation, the empire he had built, was crumbling because of her. She packed her few belongings, kissed her sleeping son, and left a note on the kitchen table. Adrian, thank you for giving me back my life. But I can't be the reason you lose yours. You deserve peace, even if it means losing me. When Adrian returned that night and found the note, his world tilted. He read it over and over, disbelief turning to anguish. For the first time in years, the man who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will felt utterly powerless. He searched for her for days, through shelters, neighborhoods, hospitals, anywhere she might have gone. Then, one cold evening, he found her standing by the same bridge where he often walked to clear his thoughts. She was holding Noah, her hair swept by the wind, her eyes distant but calm. "Lena," he breathed, stepping forward. She turned slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I should be exactly here," he said. "You think I care about headlines? Let them talk. They've talked about me my whole life, about my money, my decisions, my mistakes. For once, let them talk about my heart." Her voice trembled. "But your company can rebuild. My image can recover. But you, if I lose you, I lose the only thing that ever mattered." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to ruin you." He took her hand, firm and sure. "You didn't ruin me, Lena. You saved me." For a long moment, the world seemed to pause around them, the rush of traffic, the hum of the city fading into silence. He stepped closer, his voice a whisper. "Come home." And this time, she didn't resist. Months passed, and the world moved on. The scandal faded, replaced by admiration when Adrian announced a new initiative, a network of shelters and job programs under the banner of the Lena Project dedicated to empowering homeless mothers. The press called it revolutionary. Adrian called it love made practical. Lena became the heart of the movement, traveling city to city, telling her story, not of tragedy, but of transformation. She often stood before crowds and said, "The night I searched through trash, I thought my life was over. But it was just beginning." Sometimes, the miracle you need doesn't look like a miracle at all. Sometimes it looks like a stranger who stops, listens, and refuses to walk away. Adrian would always watch from the sidelines, his expression soft with pride. The man who once measured worth in numbers had learned to measure it in kindness, in second chances, in love that asked for nothing but truth. Years later, when their son was old enough to ask how his parents met, Lena smiled and said, "Your father saw me when the world refused to. He saw the person I could become." And Adrian, with that same quiet smile that had changed her life, would add, "And she taught me that the greatest wealth a man can have isn't power or gold, it's compassion." The city that once turned its face away from the poor now bore billboards of the Lena Foundation star. Women found hope, children found homes, and hearts once broken learned to trust again. And sometimes, late at night, when Adrian stood at the window of their home, watching the light shimmer over the city that had once felt so cold, he would feel her arms wrap around him from behind, and her voice, soft and steady, would whisper, "You changed my world." He would turn, touch her cheek, and answer, "No, Lena. You changed mine. Outside, the rain would fall again, gentle, cleansing, alive. And somewhere beneath that vast city sky, two souls who had once met by chance continued their story. Proof that even in a world of steel and sorrow, love could still bloom in the unlikeliest of places, turning despair into destiny, and a single act of kindness into a legacy that would outlive them both.